Hey everyone, and welcome to the WWE Q2 earnings report review with us here at WrestleTalk and our good friend Brandon from Wrestlenomics. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Luke. Thanks for having me on again.
No, thank you so much for coming from live from your car. Whereabouts are you at the
Live
moment?
from a 2014 Toyota Yaris, just outside my day job.
All right, cool. Well, let's dive into this quarterly report. Then, obviously, we had you on when the Q1 report came out, and in that, I said to you, "What are your predictions for the Q2 report?" And you said, "Well, they're going to save a lot of money because they're not traveling around at the moment." And lo and behold, that was one of the main reasons why they have got a massive amount of earnings for Q2.
Right. I think so there's analysts who, in large part, drive the price of WWE shares. Who I think, my understanding is the stock markets are relied on analysts to study companies and recommend buy ratings and sell ratings and hold ratings, and they estimate what the profits are going to be for each quarter and revenue and so forth. And I think the analysts had really underestimated how much WWE would save. I even asked one analyst, just after the earnings came out, why was everybody so far off? Did they just underestimate the savings? And I think that's what it was. They tripled basically the profit that the analysts expected. They expected somewhere around 11 or 14 million dollars in net income, which is basically the latest form of measuring profit. And they ended up at, I think, $44 million in net income, so just about tripling the expectation. On the other hand, the share price sort of jumped in after-hours trading. They were doing the report at 5 p.m., so that was after the market closed, and it jumped up $3, went from about $45 per share to $48 per share, so a decent jump. It's down like by 5% though today on Monday as the market reopens. So I don't know what that's about. If we some other analyst reports have come out, I gave it a look. Like, I don't have access to something like that's called the Bloomberg terminal, where you can see all the analysts' reports. I get some of them passed on to me from time to time. So, but from what I can tell, nobody's come out with a big negative report or anything. So I don't. I hope it's not because people think that Vince McMahon sold XFL to someone that has anything to do with it. The XFL is a separate company from WWE, but they do have a small investment. They have, I think, something that looks like WWE has about a 25% ownership stake, maybe something in that neighborhood of the XFL, of Alpha Entertainment. But I don't think that whatever is happening with the XFL has no bearing on WWE's finances.
I mean, I was going to say, I can't have you on here without asking about this, because it was when we posted up that we were going to be doing this show today, that was the first comment we got, was just like, are you going to talk about The Rock buying the XFL? Which is like, it's like the craziest headline. Right. And in a year of crazy headlines, that feels like the maddest headline.
Right, you probably found out it before I did, because you're about 5 hours ahead of me. But I sat down at work this morning, and I looked at Twitter, and I saw the notifications, promoting the podcast we're doing now, and I saw somebody's reply saying, "Are you guys going to talk about The Rock buying XFL?" And I thought, well, this must be a joke. There must be somebody just trolling us. And so I was like, could this be real? And I looked it up, and I'm like, my God, Dwayne Johnson has bought XFL for, I think it was $15 million. Who knows? It's just, of course, it's now under the ownership of another pro wrestling personality. Who knows? I don't know a ton about football, but maybe The Rock will do all right with it. He's had a lot of success in a lot of other areas. He's got his own production company and so forth with his ex-wife. So I don't know. There's a lot of value in live sports and in live programming, and that's sort of, I think, what the thesis of the XFL restarting was built on. So maybe he'll do all right with it whenever we can have sports with actual audiences there.
Do you know what, man? Maybe it's third time's a charm. Maybe that's what the XFL needed. It needed its third go around to really start to work.
Right. Who knows?
So what were the other things that jumped out to you from the Q2 reports?
There's a lot of questions, I think, as far as like wrestling fan interest. There's been a lot of anxiety, I think, among wrestling fans for a long time about the ratings. There's never been that much discussion about it on these earnings calls as there was this time. There was some concern from the analysts about what's the deal with viewership and what are you going to do to address it. There's sort of a notion that, well, any live sports should be in high demand right now because there's so little of it. Sports have had to be postponed and put on hiatus. And Vince sort of blamed it on the lack of crowds. And I think there's some truth to that. One analyst, Brandon Ross of Lightshed, brought up, why do you think he threw like a cascade of questions at Vince that he responded by saying, that's a lot. But he was basically asking, why do you think Raw and SmackDown ratings haven't bounced back as strongly as AEW and NXT ratings have bounced back, which is true. There has been, in the last couple months at least, NXT and AEW have made a kind of a recovery, especially in July. AEW did quite well, and NXT has held up better than Raw and SmackDown. Raw and SmackDown had a pretty rough July, and maybe months before that as well. So there's real data to back that up. And Vince's response was that, well, I think it's because they're new. But I think what maybe the question was trying to get at, and first with this question was also sort of the suggestion about where we going to see Paul Levesque in an elevated role on the main roster in terms of creative. And Vince's retort to that is, of course, that, well, Paul Levesque does help with main roster creative, and I believe that does. But I think what was being gotten at there is when are we going to see maybe somebody else or somebody like Paul Levesque have more influence than he already has with creative. So what I think is being gotten at there, I think the important point is that NXT and AEW are, while they are less viewed certainly in the U.S. than Raw and SmackDown are, they have held up better or have bounced back better viewership while Raw and SmackDown haven't. And what are the differences between Raw and SmackDown and NXT and AEW is that Raw and SmackDown is controlled by Vince McMahon. NXT is delegated largely to Paul Levesque, and AEW obviously has nothing to do with WWE. So the difference is one is controlled by Vince McMahon and the others aren't. And so that was, as far as the wrestling fan conversation goes, I think that was the most interesting part. Another thing that came up though as well is the stock buyback program that they had suspended in response to COVID. They announced not that they're restarting it, but that they're considering restarting it whenever they think that whenever their analysis determines that the shares are undervalued, they may make strategic buybacks, which is basically my understanding of the stock buyback is when a company uses its own cash to buy shares in its own stock, which makes the stock more scarce and increases the demand for the shares and should increase the value of the shares and increase the share price. It's sort of a way for a company to deliver value to its investors. So that's good news for investors. But it sort of really opposes any assertion that this company on April 15th set released a number of talent, put a lot of employees, laid off a lot of employees, and furloughed many as well. And it brings to mind comments that were made even by Paul Levesque about how this is a time when a lot of companies are making tough decisions to do what they have to do to survive. And this company is so financially comfortable and profitable that they're considering using some of the cash they have on hand to buy back stock and continue to deliver more value to their shareholders. So again, great news if you're an investor in WWE. Maybe you would be pretty upset though if you were one of those employees who got laid off back in April and find out that the money that they're saving by cutting you is being used to deliver more value to shareholders. Many of those shareholders are WWE executives, and by the way, the biggest shareholder that there is in WWE is Vince McMahon.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that really struck me. And like Meltzer brought this up in his kind of write-up of the reports was that the money that they've got here hasn't been made from them making the firings, because that's going to be in the Q3 report. It's all the money that they're not spending on traveling at the moment. And the amount of money that they've got there could have paid for that talent for at least the rest of the year and easily into next year.
Right. The thought that all the talent who was released were on 90-day non-competes. So throughout those 90 days from April 15th, which would be July not just firing and layoffs and furloughs, but they stopped the stock buyback program, for example. They did some postponement of doing their new headquarters. So there's a lot of cost cutting happening there. But I think the biggest saving of all has nothing to do with any sort of action they took in reaction to COVID, but just the fact they're at the performance center doing TV, and it is much cheaper to do TV at a performance center than it is to do it at a sports arena where you're doing a lot of loading in and loading out, and there's a lot of production time and costs and labor involved. When you've just got your set up sitting there at the facility in Orlando, that's a huge cost savings for them. Probably not broadcasting it live is a savings as well, and just being able to do multiple tapings, multiple episodes in a single day of tapings is an additional cost saving. So yeah, and the money that they're making from producing Raw and SmackDown is guaranteed money. Certainly in the U.S., and that deals may be slightly different in other regions, but I think in India it's guaranteed and escalating. In the UK, I'm not sure. Definitely in the U.S., these payments are guaranteed and escalating. So each payment that they get from Fox or NBC Universal is bigger than the last one throughout the 5 years of this deal. And this deal just started last October at a big upgrade from their past deal. So it doesn't matter how many people view the show; they're getting a lot of money regardless. It's a little bit different than say AEW that does share in ad revenue with TNT, and that is driven by viewership.
So the other thing to note from this quarterly report as well is that the subscriber numbers went up for, I believe, the first time in like a couple of years that we've actually seen an increase in subscribers. And I've got to think that certainly comes off the back of WrestleMania being over 2 nights and being available free, and the introduction of the free tier that they've now got.
Right. The free tier launched on June 1st. So the numbers are, they give you two numbers when it comes to network subscribers. They give you the average throughout the quarter, and then they give you, here's the number at the very end of the quarter, so June 30th. And then they also tell you what's the average throughout the entire 3 months. The average paid subs was down very slightly, and the end period is what was up. So as of the end of the quarter, though, but maybe that tells you something about what's going to happen going forward. As of the end of the quarter, it was up from the same quarter of the prior year. And there's a lot of seasonality with WWE subscriptions because of the timing of WrestleMania, and that's always their peak for the year. Yeah, I think so. There's no more, along with the free tier, there's no more free trial happening. And I tend to think that this factor is overrated, but maybe there is some people gaming the system, continually creating, just starting up a new Gmail account and creating a new user account, and then getting the free 30-day free trial all over again. So that's out completely. Like, you can't get a free trial anymore. You can go watch a limited, amount of content on the network, and that's the free tier. But you can't create a free account and get full access to a pay-per-view anymore. So maybe that's part of what's driving it. I think the strategy behind the free tier of the network is, I think they're making a lot of money by putting advertisements on the network. I think one thing that people talk about sometimes on Twitter when a pay-per-view is happening, why am I watching? I'm already paying $9.99 or whatever the price point is for the WWE Network. Why am I watching all these commercials? Well, they're selling that ad time and making more money, and they report a line in their reporting within the media division called advertising and sponsorships. And there's I think it's probably taking a hit right now because of COVID and the lessened demand for advertising, because the economy overall is taking a big hit. But it's an area that drives, I don't know, somewhere between maybe $15 and $20 million at a normal time per quarter from them. But yeah, it's and part of the increase in network subscribers as well could just be, people are stuck in their homes more, spending a lot more time at home, and so subscribing to the network or staying subscribed.
Absolutely. Just to let everyone know who is in the chats watching us live, do get your questions in for Brandon to ask about the Q2 report. See if he's able to answer the questions at the very least anyway. But was there anything else that really stuck out to you from either the report or from the investors call that came afterwards?
Merchandise sales online were were way up. I haven't gone back and looked to see if this was the biggest quarter ever for online merchandise sales, but it was, I think, $12.6 million in revenue for online merchandise.
Oh, we might have lost Brandon completely now. We were having some technical issues anyway with his case. As you can see, he is currently doing this from his car. Hopefully Brandon can get this back. In the meantime, get your questions into me, perhaps. Maybe I can possibly answer your questions about the earnings report, or if you want to ask questions about The Rock buying the XFL, let us know. Get your chats in, guys. Yeah, I mean, on the subject of The Rock buying the XFL, man, like, did not expect that. Did not expect that at all for the year 2020. I mean, I was actually amazed that the XFL was coming back regardless. And then turns out that, we had our issues with it. And and then it went kaput because COVID really, there goes Brandon, because COVID kind of killed everything and kind of killed all those sport. And unfortunately, now you've seen that my backdrop doesn't fill the entire screen. Look at that. You can see my coat is. There's actually a picture of me and Ollie there. Picture of me at YouTube's Christmas party last year. So who'd have thunk it that The Rock has bought the XFL? Absolutely amazing. Right, let's see if you've got any questions in there. Do you think the network subs are going up again in the next quarterly report? I certainly think they could be, Callum, to be honest. As Brandon was talking about there, like, it's the free tier has really helped in terms of like raising up those subscriber numbers, because there's now no longer the option to get the 7-day free trial. So you're not getting, just as Brandon was saying, you're not creating new account after new account after new account and sort of like artificially inflate the numbers. Now you can just get it for free. So you may as well just create an account and just sort of stay on there. And in turn, you'd have thought that should raise up those numbers. Thank you to everyone who is watching with us. I'm going to see if Brandon's able to get back on the call. I'm just going to send him a quick message. 1 second. Otherwise, we may end the stream slightly early. Man. And by the way, it is hot. I am sweating up a storm. Is Vince involved? Oh, no. Look, here he is. Brandon is possibly back. I think he might be back. Hey, Brandon appears to be back. How are you? Oh, no, unfortunately, we cannot hear you, man. 1 second. He's working it out. He's looking puzzling. Sorry, where did that question go? Is Vince involved in The Rock buying the XFL? I don't think so, Eddie. I certainly don't think that he's involved in buying it. I think very much it's The Rock's a man who has got a lot of projects. He's got his a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, which is quite ironic. Is that better, Brandon? Nope. Just 1 second. 1 second. Let's see. What other questions have we got? Oh, we may be getting a different Brandon being added into the stream instead. Hey, now we can hear sound.
You hear me now, right? Yeah. Sorry, my iPhone got too hot, but I blasted the AC, so hopefully I won't have to get.
Right. 1 second while you get settled. Cool. Yeah. Right. How are you doing? Much better?
Yeah.
No worries. No worries at all. You were talking about online merchandise sales, and that was up massively.
Yeah, online merchandise did 12.6 million, which is, I think, double from what it had been the year prior in the same period, which is, it might be the biggest quarter ever for online merchandise, in a quarter where there was no game merchandise, right? Because there were no events. Usually WWE sells at least a few $1 million in merchandise. This quarter especially would have been big because this would have been included in WrestleMania and all the events around WrestleMania that do very well in merchandise sales. Obviously you have the NXT events and the Hall of Fame events, and the Raw and SmackDown. They're all in the same city, all attracting those traveling wrestling fans. So it would have done about $3 million in venue merchandise alone just for WrestleMania weekend, which obviously didn't happen. So it seems like consumers were compensating at events by going online and buying merchandise, which was not obvious that was going to happen to me beforehand.
No.
I questioned maybe, the economy's taking a hit, people are unemployed, maybe people aren't going to be spending money on WWE merchandise right now, but they did. It did much larger numbers than I expected. To an extent, they gave credit to replica belt sales in the call. I think because of the belt redesign that it just happened, that helped sales. I don't know if the $6,000 Bray Wyatt Fiend belt had much to do with it, but who knows? They didn't go into that level of granularity, but that had something to do with it. The belt sales did. Said so.
There was a question that came up that I wanted to ask you. It's actually from Callum. I've kind of given some thoughts on it, but do you think the network subs will go up again in the next quarterly report?
In Q3 is the months of July, August, and September. They were up in Q2 thanks to WrestleMania. Average subs were up slightly, and that period were up considerably. I would guess it'll be even or maybe slightly down. As we were alluding to earlier, the network subs have been down some 4 quarters in a row. Still, average subs were slightly down, so that's 5 quarters in a row. I would think, as apparently viewership is taking a hit, I would think that indicates something about general interest in the product. So I think maybe it'll be slightly down. There is the offsetting effect of maybe people want to stream stuff while they're stuck at home, but maybe it won't be quite enough to completely offset diminishing interest in general while we're at least in this COVID era where the arenas are not filled with real fans, and the content is less interesting and exciting.
I've got a question here from Corey who says, it isn't WWE related, but I was wondering if you knew anything about Jon Moxley as a ratings draw.
Yes, that everyone wants to know. You have the I do have quarter-hour data, and yeah, when we do Wrestlenomics, a lot of times people want to know. Sometimes I get to a lot of tweets that are people asking, or trying to justify that their favorite or least favorite wrestler is or isn't a draw. Well, it's hard without having the minute-by-minute ratings, which we don't have. We do have quarter hours, and I haven't done what I would consider a thorough study of it, but I have taken on labels with each segment and tried to line them up to, considering what you would expect for all the segments, because certain segments are biased to do well or biased to not do well, because the first segment of the program is usually really strong. For example, first segment of the second hour is usually really strong. But from the preliminary studies that I've done, the people you would expect to do well, most of them do well, and there are some like anomalies, like people you don't expect. But generally, what I'm saying is, yeah, Jericho does well, Moxley does well, Cody, and especially when Cody and MJF were doing their feud, MJF did well as well. Yeah, and MJF claims to be the leader in minute-by-minute ratings or something like that. I think that's what the level.
That's right, yeah.
I'm suspicious whether or not that is true. Although, I'm not saying he may be up there, but the best, I don't know.
Question from Jobber JJ that says, the next quarter will include the fired wrestlers. How much do you expect WWE to save while continuing to run shows in the Performance Center?
They're going to continue to save a lot. I've done estimates. I can't tell off the top of my head how much they're saving, like in a full quarter, but they're saving probably tens of millions of dollars per quarter in terms of what it would cost them, the difference of what it would cost them to run it out of a live sports arena. The amount of money they're saving from just the cost cutting, according to their press release that they put out in April, they're saving $4 million on a monthly basis just from their cost cutting, which includes talent cuts, but not that's just one piece of it, as well as postponing the headquarters and pausing the stock buyback program. So it's something that I could do research on, that anybody could do research on. Maybe to try to get an estimate about how much they're really gonna save from the talent that's not gonna be around anymore. It's probably maybe a million or a couple million per month, maybe. In the context of WWE, a company that's gonna maybe make around $1 billion in revenue a year, it's a very small amount, right? In terms of a company that made $44 million in profit in Q2 and made a similar amount in Q1, they're already at something like $70 million in net income for the year, which is approaching what they made in the entire year last year. They're very much on track to set their all-time net income record. They're as profitable as ever, which is the record is $99.6 million, which was set about 18. Which even when you adjust that for inflation, that is the most profitable WWE has ever been. The WWE that we know today is more profitable, even when you adjust for inflation, than the Attitude Era that we had in 1999, 2012.
Yeah.
It did very well, close. I think they're about $80 million net income in their peak during the late 90s. But the TV money is so big. WWE's very fortunate in this media environment where suddenly there's an extreme amount of value for live content like WWE has, in which, and everybody who's watched the 3-hour Raw knows, they're willing to create more of it to fill the time. So yeah, they're very fortunate. I think I told somebody, there's a lot of criticism to be had about the creative. And I think Vince McMahon is sort of doing whatever he wants in terms of creativity, projecting based on the audience, what he thinks the audience wants. But WWE is very fortunate to find itself in a media environment where his content is, the value of his content is exploding, and that really eclipses whatever negative effects this team might have.
Dwayne the Gronk Johnson says, who do you think Vince is going to blame and maybe fire for the falling ratings in the next quarter?
Good question. Well, last year he created executive director roles for Raw and SmackDown and filled that with Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman. Eric Bischoff didn't last long in that role. And I think that it was a reaction to declining what they were calling engagement metrics. He had attendance down. WWE Network subscriptions were down year over year, and merchandise sales were down. Not just vending merchandise, which is driven by attendance, but even online sales were down. So there's a number of consumer metrics that were down, TV viewership as well, and I think in reaction to that, he created those two executive director roles to at least tell the stock market, whether or not it was sincere, who knows, but to at least tell the stock market and the investors that we're taking this seriously, and we realize that there needs to be some change. So what better than to bring back the guy who had the most success with WCW and the guy who created the ECW brand. But as we know, Eric Bischoff only lasted a couple months in that role. Paul Heyman lasted all the way up until I think June when he was fired or whatever. And Bruce Pritchard replaced Eric Bischoff shortly after Bischoff was out. And then it was announced on the W Twitter account that they're streamlining the executive director roles to be combined into one with Bruce Pritchard. So, I think Vince will probably continue to blame whatever viewership trends that continue. He'll continue to explain it as we don't have a live crowd there, and the live crowd is so important to what we do, which it is. It's like the third person, and it is. And TV programming, I think in general, is less attractive to viewers and consumers when there's not a genuine live crowd there in the thousands. I think the bigger picture part of it though is they don't create stars, and there's a lot of good talent and a lot of talent that's very marketable that has their marketability undercut by a long list of problems created.
Absolutely. This is an interesting one I think we would end on from Sharvash that says, I don't think this ever asked before, but do you think that as the money increases, do you think it would have an effect on their content? Would it be a positive or negative effect?
I guess if the question is, if they have more money, maybe they could use some of that money to invest invest in better content, you would think. I don't think what WWE needs is more money to be invested in content. I think we need a completely different approach to creative. I've been talking to one person who's worked in the TV industry not too long ago, and he suggested to me that there's this idea that WWE might sell its pay-per-view rights, might sell the pay-per-views off the network and onto a major streaming player like maybe Peacock, which just launched, maybe ESPN Plus, maybe even Amazon Prime, and they could sell the pay-per-views away from the WWE network, so that they didn't have to worry about how well are our network subscriber numbers doing. They just sell it for guaranteed money to a major media company, just like they've sold the rights to Raw and SmackDown to major media companies as a podcast feed. And maybe they get $100 million, let's say, per year for that content, for 12 shows a year. And it would be guaranteed. There would be no risk to it. They wouldn't have to worry about, well, we didn't put on that great of a show, we didn't attract fans to our show, like especially like it was at pay-per-view. If you had a bad show, the difference between hundreds of thousands of pay-per-view buys, the difference of millions of dollars. The idea that you sell all that stuff and there's no risk there. But anyway, I was talking to somebody who suggested that, the more that you can have guaranteed money, the more that you can, invest more time in creative work. Maybe invest that additional guaranteed revenue in creative. And I think that's the main issue, though, is not that not enough time is being spent on creative. It's the wrong kind of time, the wrong kind of vision, the wrong kind of approach. And I think it's one of the things that only maybe a handful of analysts understand is not. I think a lot of analysts are very well trained in understanding finances, financial documents, and making estimates about key metrics and revenue and various profit metrics. But WWE is one of maybe a dozen companies that they do this for, and they don't necessarily understand the content and don't necessarily pay attention to it.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Brendan, for taking the time to speak with us today. I really appreciate it. Apologies to those who were struggling to hear you slightly with the everything sort of going around. But we very much appreciate you taking the time out from your, what essentially is your lunch break to have a chat with us. We really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Brandon. And we'll have you on again when we come around to the Q3 reports. Very much looking forward to it. Do you have any big predictions for it?
I think it's going to be another very profitable quarter, maybe similarly. So if they're at 70 now, I think there's a good chance that they may break their all-time net income record just in 3 quarters.
Wow.
Even as there's no live audience, the tickets being sold, maybe average paid subs flat, but more profitable than ever.
Well, there you go. More profitable than ever, WWE. There are links to all of Brandon's social media accounts in the video description down below, as well as a link to the Wrestlenomics website. Please go check out the work that Brandon's doing, which is absolutely fantastic. It is a fascinating Twitter feed to follow as well, because if you like numbers and graphs, which I very much do, it's a fantastic feed. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us, Brandon. And thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.